Well, let's pray before we sit down. Say this after me. Father, this is your word. It's what I live by. It's what I hold on to. It's what my life is built around. Thank you for showing me things today that I've never known before. Thank you for showing me things that I can build life with, that I can build my family with. And thank you, Father, for showing me things that will build my character, that I will be a person that you can always count on. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Let's give Jesus a hand clap, amen. You may be seated. Thanks so much. On the plains of Tanzania in Africa, a young buffalo named Walter approached his dad and asked him, he said, Dad, he said, is there anything that I ever need to be afraid of? His dad responded and said, but only lions, my son, only lions. He said, oh, Dad, yes, I've heard about those. If I ever see one, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn and I'm going to run as fast as I can. And his dad said, Walter, he said, that's the worst thing that you could ever do. This large male, his father, said to him, he said, Walter, that's the worst thing that you could ever do in all of your life. Why? They're scary and they'll try to kill me. The dad smiled and explained, Walter, if you run away, the lions will chase you and catch you. And when they do, they'll jump on your exposed back and they'll drag you down. So what should I do? Cried Walter to his father. He said, if you ever see a lion, if you ever come in contact with one, if you ever face one, he said, stand your ground and show him that you're not afraid. If he doesn't move away, show him your sharp horns and stomp the ground with your hooves. He said, if that doesn't work, move slowly towards him. But if that doesn't work, charge him and hit him with everything you've got. Hit him with everything that you have. We're going to pick up the little story with Walter in a moment. But what is it that people are afraid of? We've talked about that. We've talked about the very common things, but I now want to bring to you some other things that people are concerned about. Things that nag people inside. Things that people, they don't talk about. But yet when they're surveyed, people are willing to be open about them. So what are they afraid of? Number 10, of losing their freedom. People never want to lose their freedom because they never have imagined what it would be like if they actually would lose control of their own lives. Number 9, the unknown. The fear of the unknown. So the fear of the unknown is explained like this. The mind tells us if we move forward, then we need to know what we're moving toward. Because if we know, we can control the situation. But if we don't know what we're moving toward, then we're not in control of our future. It's the fear of the unknown. How many of you have ever faced that? Number 8 is pain. Pain. Physical pain. Emotional pain. People don't want to deal with pain. They're just afraid of it. It's the thing that they never want to hear about. It's just painful. Just so much pain. And there's pain on every row. There's pain with every person. There's pain that people deal with. Number 7, disappointment. People fear disappointment. But not only just disappointing others, but also disappointing themselves. You see, we all have, as children, we lived the awful experience in which we did something wrong. We misbehaved, and we were expecting a punishment that was great. I can tell you the day when that happened to me. All of us as kids have done that. And when we expected to get from our parents them screaming at us or chasing us with a stick or some other type of thing that they were going to be able to discipline us with, instead they just looked at us with saddened eyes and they said, I'm disappointed in you. I remember the day that I heard the words, I'm disappointed in you, Rob. And when I heard those words were words I never wanted to hear. I just didn't want to hear that, hey, I might have been bad. I might have done something crazy, but are you kidding? Do you really want to say that you were disappointed in me? Because any other punishment would have been so much better. Number 6, misery. Misery. People are afraid of being miserable. In many ways, they don't even know how to explain being miserable, but they're just miserable. Misery has to do with poverty, but poverty not necessarily in the financial case, but poverty in the area of having an absence of things. Things that you loved, things that you wanted, things that you thought would always be there for you. Just misery. At night, you can hardly wait to go to sleep. But in the morning, you wish that you could go back to sleep all over again. People that are miserable. Number 5 was loneliness. The 5th most important fear was loneliness. Because the fear of being alone is the dreadful feeling of emptiness that's caused by the absence of interaction with another human. To be lonely. Loneliness. Number 4, people are afraid of being ridiculed. They're afraid of being criticized. They don't want to be criticized. How many of you like being criticized? None of us really do you? Man, I'm telling you, people hate the idea of being criticized. You know what's so funny is that I know how much these things are true for all of us. But isn't it funny how that we do the very thing that Adam did in the garden? And that was that he took fig leaves and he sewed aprons together in order for him to be able to hide the fear that he had. How many times have we done that? Ridicule. We don't want to be criticized. Number 3 was rejection. Rejection. See, to me, I think that for me, this may be the number 1 issue for me. It's rejection. You try so hard, you try so strongly, you put all your effort into it, but yet you may not necessarily be accepted because of it. But this social fear is one of the main reasons people act the way they do. Many times we follow blindly the actions of others because it helps us avoid dealing with rejection that comes from other people. So we become like them. It's a funny thing about rejection because people are actually willing to give up their values in order to gain acceptance. Has that ever happened to you? Number 2 is death. Somebody say, well, why isn't the fear of death number 1? Why isn't it? Well, it's really number 2. The reason why that the fear of death is not number 1 is because most of us, although we know each and every one of us is going to kick the bucket, we know that everyone is going to kick the bucket. So what we do is we actually take that one out of the way because we don't see it as something that can happen today or this afternoon. We don't think that that's really real. But the first fear, the number one fear that people face is failure. It's failure. It's not being good enough. It's not being enough. It's not having enough. It's the wondering if whether or not that tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, that I'm going to be able to have the things I need to have. And this fear has the top spot because it rules all of our actions and our decisions. The fear of failure. But you realize that those things actually not only happen to us today, but all of those things have happened to the people that we find in the Scriptures. We find that Adam was afraid. He ran from God. We find that Moses was afraid. We find that Isaiah actually trembled before God. We find that the Apostle Paul said that we're stressed on every side. We find all of these things. But even in all of this, one thing we know, and we know to be true, is that no matter where you've come from, it only matters where you're going. And no matter where you've come from, God said He would never leave you. He'll never leave you. Even with all of those things, all those fears, I actually came to a place in my own life, in my own heart, just this past week, where what I did was I had to say to myself, Lord, have I actually gotten upset with you over something that I never should have? Were you really my issue? Isn't it funny how we do that sometimes? How that we begin to think like, man, God, you're the one that's behind all of this. But we know that He's not. Say, God will never leave me. He'll never turn His back on me. He has my good on His mind. We find that to be true even with Joshua. Here it was that Moses, the servant of God, had now died. And God was really open about that. And He said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, I don't know about you, but if I were Joshua at that particular time, I would actually have begun to freak out. I would have thought, what in the world is now about to happen? Because when you've trusted Moses and his abilities, and he is spoken about as being the greatest leader of all time, we can look, books are written that have gone all around the world over that one person whose name was Moses. His principles have actually led our businesses. His ability to be able to delegate. We find the things that even run through our business lives and personal lives today, and those came from Moses. But here it was, as God's continuing to speak to this man Joshua, who never knew how to lead. And here he is afraid. And here's what God actually tells him in verse number 5. He said, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your lives. As I was with Moses, so I'll be with you. He said, I will never leave you, and I will never, ever forsake you. I'll never leave you. Say, He'll never leave me, nor will He ever forsake me. No matter what's going on in my life, He'll never leave me. Boy, how true is that? Is that He'll never leave you, and He'll never forsake you. He tells him in verse number 7, He said, now listen, Joshua, only be strong and be very courageous. You be very courageous. Remember, Walter? Be strong, Walter. and be very courageous. You see, Jesus said those very same words to each and every one of us. He said in Matthew chapter 28, verse number 20, he said, teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I've given you. And be sure of this. He said, I'm with you always. I'm with you always. Say, he is with me, always. See, even to the end of the age. He's with you always. You never need to wonder whether or not that he's with you. You never need to think about whether or not that he is there. You never need to ponder the idea that he will not come through for you, because your faith will pull you through. In the book of Isaiah, one of the greatest prophets in all of the scriptures, the Bible tells us some things that to me are absolutely life-changing. It was one of the first things that I had learned when I first came to Christ. One of the first verses that I had ever taken into my heart. He said this, don't fear. He said, I'm with you. He said, don't be afraid, for I'm your God. He said, I'll strengthen you. Yes, I'll help you. Yes, I'm going to uphold you with my righteous right hand. He said, don't fear. You know, one of the things of my life was fear. I could never tell you what I was afraid of. I just was. I was a person that was riddled by it. Every one of those 10 fears, I couldn't even sort them out for you because of how real that they were to my life. But then I learned, I'm not to fear because he's with me. I'm not ever going to be dismayed because he's my God. He'll strengthen me. Yes, he'll help me. He'll uphold me. He will uphold me with his righteous right hand. Isaiah, this great prophet, goes on to say in verse number 13, he says, I'm holding you by your right hand, for I am the Lord your God, and I say, don't be afraid. He said, don't be afraid, because I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you. How many of you could use some help? He's here to help you, no matter where you are, no matter what's going on. You see, life sometimes can become so clouded with the things that become everyday issues to us that we tend to forget that we're not to be afraid, and he's here to help us. He's here. He sent the Holy Spirit here to be able to help you. That no matter where you are, the acknowledgement of the Holy Spirit is important. Remember the 3 million Jews? The difference between the two and the other 299,998 Jews, or 998,998. What was the difference? One of them actually said, we can do this. I know he's here to help me. I know that I can make this. He's going to be with me always. He'll never turn his back on me. He won't quit on me. He's not going to bring me out here. But remember what the children of Israel said? As soon as they had come out of Egypt, as soon as God had delivered them, what was their first thing that they said? Why'd you bring us out here to die? We got this far, but now we're not going to be able to go any further. God brought us halfway, but the other half, you're on your own, pal. He never said that. Both Joshua and Caleb said the very same things. They said, he's taken us this far. He'll take us the rest of the way. Say, God has brought me this far. He'll take me the rest of the way. He really will. So take the edge off. Give up the stress. Roll your care on God about it. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. He'll never turn his back on you. He won't tell you, hey, listen, pal, you're on your own. He's right here for you. There's an interesting thing that I found today. In 1 John chapter 4, verse number 18, a verse we've used earlier in this month, is this love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we're afraid, it's for fear of judgment. That was what touched me. Is that if I'm afraid, it's because I'm afraid that I'll be judged. But I already know that He's with me. He'll never leave me. He'll never forsake me. He was the one who said that there is therefore, when? Now, no condemnation. There's no judgment for you. You see, when you're afraid, it's because you're afraid that you'll be judged. But there is no judgment for you. You don't need to be afraid. He's not going to judge you. He said that you're right in His eyes. He said that because of your relationship with Jesus Christ, you never need to fear ever again. Don't be afraid. Just be willing to talk about when things get tough. You talk to Him. He's your Father. He loves you. He's not against you. He's your Father. Say, God is my Father. He's not just God. He's my Father. So when you talk to Him, you can talk to Him. He's your Father. The answer is yes. Now what's the question? He's your Father. He said, because if we're afraid, it's because we're not really sure that He's not judging us. He said, and this shows that His love has not been perfected in us. It shows me that my love has not been perfected. I haven't really pressed into the fact that no matter what, God loves me. God cares for me. God is interested in me. Now, He doesn't want me to just walk on my merry way and just forget about all of the rest of life. He believes that because of my love for Him, it will drive me into a place of wanting to please Him with everything that I am. With everything that I am. There's a poem that's called Footprints. Many of you know it. It says, one night a man had a dream. He dreamed he was walking along the beach with the Lord. Across the sky flashed scenes from his life. For each scene he noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand. One belonging to him and the other one belonging to the Lord. When the last scene of his life flashed before him, he looked back at the footprints in the sand. He noticed that many times along the path of his life, there was only one set of footprints. He also noticed that it happened at the very lowest and saddest times in all of his life. This really bothered him, and he questioned the Lord about it. He said, Lord, you said that once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I've noticed that during the most troublesome times in all of my life, there is only one set of footprints. I don't understand why. When I needed you the most, why you would ever leave me. The Lord replied, my son, my precious child, I love you, and I would never leave you. During your times of trial and suffering, when you see only one set of footprints, it was then that I was carrying you. You see, Let's bow our heads. It's so important for us. I have a couple of important questions. The first one is that if your heart stopped right now, if it quit beating in the next minute or two, are you at peace with God? Are you at peace with Him? Do you know where you spend eternity? If not, I want to pray with you. I never said, because you go to church. I said, do you know where you would spend eternity? I'm not here to condemn anyone. Oh God, may I never be in that seat of ever condemning another human being. I'm here to help you find a new beginning. And I know that comes and only comes from a deep personal relationship with Jesus Christ. In just a moment, if you're not at peace with the Lord, or maybe you're a Christian, but your heart has grown cold toward God. If you've grown cold, in your heart of hearts, you know that you need to recommit your life to Christ. You need a fresh start. A fresh start. If that's you, I'm also going to ask you to take a step of faith and pray with me right where you are. I can't think of a better time to get your life back on track than today. The best news of all is that God is not mad. He's not mad at you. Your sins have already been forgiven. Like the children of Israel, their way that was already paved to the promised land. Yet they didn't believe it. But your sins have already been forgiven. All you've got to do is accept the free gift. My question is, will you do it? Hell will always tell you you can do it later. It doesn't matter if you do it now. It'll give you 100 reasons why that you can't pray this prayer today. They'll say, when you come back next week, you can pray it then. Or he'll just say, you can't pray it now, because you'd be a hypocrite. Friends, none of us are perfect. You come to Jesus just like you are. He's waiting for you. You may say, Pastor, I know, but this is just embarrassing. I feel vulnerable. I don't want to raise my hand because I'm so vulnerable. Do you know the great thing about Jesus is this? He said that if you'd be willing to confess me before men, he said, I'm willing to confess you before my Father in heaven. I'm going to give you an opportunity to show that you're not ashamed of him. If you're not at peace with the Lord, you need to rededicate and recommit your life to Christ, and you want a fresh new start, a new beginning, I want to pray with you right now. So if you know that if your heart stopped beating right now, that you wouldn't go to heaven, or you question, you're not sure, or right now, you know you need to recommit your life to God, because it's not what it needs to be. It's not what it needs to be. And you want it to be different. On the count of 3, I want you to raise your hands and let me pray with you. So if your heart stopped beating, or you know that your heart has grown cold and you need to recommit your life to the Lord. If that's true, on the count of 3, I want you to raise your hand. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All over the room. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Anyone else? These 4 people. It's time for you to reconnect with God. Thank you. It's time for you to recommit to God. For you to soften your heart before Him. Let's pray. Please, everyone, pray this after me. My Father and my God, I'm asking you to wash me clean of all my sins. Jesus Christ, I confess you as the Lord of my life. I put faith in you. I believe it. That from this moment forward, I am a believer. I'm not a doubter. My life belongs to God from this moment forward. In Jesus' name. Now there's a couple things I want to tell you. First is, welcome to God's family. Because we need a family. We need a family. We live this life almost as orphans, and we need to have a family. Here's a couple things. Number 1, come back to church. And when you come back to church, bring your friends. Number 2, don't hang around with people that drag you down. Only talk to people that will really build your relationship with God's Word. You just bring them, you bring them. Bring them to church, go pick them up. Don't let them talk to you, just bring them up. Pick them up and bring them with you. And that's really true. Remember I told you we were going to go back and talk about Walter? Well, if you remember the story, it ended with his dad telling him that what you need to do is if that lion comes at you, you need to turn toward him. You need to stare him down. If that won't do it, you need to begin to walk to him. If that won't do it, he said, show him your horns and stomp your hooves. He said, and if that won't do it, charge him with everything you've got. That's where we pick up Walter's story. Walter the buffalo. And he said back to his dad, he said, you know that, Dad? He said, that's crazy. Charging him, he said, I'll be too scared to do that. What if he attacks me back? Said the startled young buffalo. He said, look around, Walter. He said, what do you see? Walter looked around at the rest of the herd. There were approximately 200 massive beasts, all armed with sharp horns and huge shoulders. And he said, Walter, if you're ever afraid, know that we are here. If you panic and run from your fears, we can't save you. But if you charge towards them, we'll be right behind you. May God touch your life today. May He change you. And may you become everything that God desires for you to be. Thank you, thank you, thank you.